The theme of Lattice 2014, Synergy of Youth and Experience, India's Future, intends to explore emerging cross-generational issues and discover possible synergies amongst these seemingly polar groups which can benefit our organizations. Over the course of the next 2 days, through our esteemed guests, speakers, panelists, and students, we hope to discuss various issues troubling Indian organizations and focus on how today's populace can work together to realize our country's growth potential. It is our honor to have with us today Professor Ashok Banerjee, Dean, New Initiatives and External Relations, Professor Partha Pratimpal, who is Chairperson PGPEX, and Mr. Ram Kumar Narayanan, a very special guest from eBay. He's the General Manager, eBay Product Development Center in India. I would now request Professor Ashok Banerjee to please come on stage. Sir, if you could please take a seat. Thank you, sir. I would now call Professor Partha Pratimpal to please come on stage. And Mr. Ram Kumar Narayanan, could you please come on stage, sir? I would request our guest Ram Kumar Narayanan, sir, and Professor Partha Pratimpal also to please join Professor Banerjee in lighting up the lamp. I request all faculty members to please join in.
Mr. Ram Kumar that he could make time to come over here, and he in fact told me that this is his first visit not only to IIM Calcutta but to the city itself. So welcome to you to the city and to the institute. I'm sure in this Lattice program we will deliberate on the challenges before the country, before the business, and before the youngsters. I would say that there are three things each business establishment, regulators, policymakers, and people like you, students, should think about. One is expectation. The present government has generated a lot of expectations. It's good to have high expectations, but then managing it is very equally important. And if I can draw an analogy, the companies which are listed in stock exchanges, they also give expectation. When they say guidance, it's nothing but expectations. And there's a regulation in India that if your actual results deviate from expectation by more than 20%, you have to really explain why it has gone up or gone down by 20%. So similarly, for the government also it is a challenge. If they have set an expectation, they must meet their expectation. And we have to see what is there in store in future.
Good morning, everybody. Congratulate the PGPX team for organizing this event so nicely. I don't have much to say here apart from the fact that this has been an annual event business symposium for the PGPX students for the last few years, and it started in 2009. And when it started, Biju basically spelled out, Professor Biju Paul Abraham, who was the chairperson at that time. So I was looking through the documents, and this is what Biju said, and I think this still remains the preamble of the Lattice program. So he said the event will aim to provide a forum where we can address the current state of Indian business, debate on the future blueprint the country should embark on, and discuss the imperative role of B schools in grooming the next generation leaders. Each year we have a theme, and this year, as they have talked, that the theme is on synergy between youth and experience. I hope you interact with the academicians and the industry leaders and gain a lot out of the program. And I stop here and enjoy the 2 days of fun. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor Banerjee, Professor Pal, esteemed faculty, friends. Thank you for having me. And as Professor Banerjee said, this is my first visit to Kolkata. Don't ask me why. It's been so long. It's such a historic city, but circumstances probably never brought me here. So until today. And so thank you. So when I got this invitation, I said, you know what, this is probably prophetic that it's time for me to go visit Kolkata. And hopefully this won't be my last visit. I've been back in India for about 9 years now. And 9 years ago, I came back in a role which was with Microsoft. And I was chief of staff to the chairman of Microsoft India, where we were looking at strategies for expansion in India and strategy for what we should do in India. And the big promise that was there was the demographic dividend. It's been 9 years. And frankly, I don't think we moved the needle. We actually probably made it worse by churning out more and more young people who are probably not very relevant for what their jobs are. My learning over the last few years of managing building large organizations in India has been that the environment has changed. To your point about the environment changing, the environment has changed. What that changes for all of us is how well are we prepared for that? How well are we prepared for those new challenges where the expectation is not about managing large teams, the expectation is about managing a small group of people who can be highly innovative and execute extremely well, knowing where the market is going, or at least projecting where the market is going and able to do that. The intention here is to focus on what did I learn? And I just completed, or I'm a little over 25 years of work experience, right? And as you can see, part of that is I lost all my hair. Every job I have taken in my career has got nothing to do with what I know. I've always tried to do something different, right? To me, it's about the learning aspect of it, the confidence that perhaps I have the ability to learn and move forward. So I think that the element of calculated risk is important to keep yourself refreshed, keep yourself relevant, because when sometimes these curveballs are thrown at you when you least expect it, right? The market changes on you suddenly. Expectations change on you. And I see this with mid-career professionals.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to give you a cautionary warning before I start. I was walking around this hall and looking at the pictures of some great people. And I realized that I am the most unqualified chap to be called in front of not only the great pictures here and the legacy, but also you guys. When I was in school, I got that flash which said, everybody is competing with everybody, and there are these 100 cars in a straight line, and this tunnel into which one car will get in. So this one guy gets in, what happens to the other 99 cars? So we always are focused on this one guy and we celebrate him and we don't celebrate the majority. And so this sort of bothered me. It didn't bother me because I was a student of cinema. It didn't bother me because I was doing whatever I was doing. It bothered me and it still bothers me today. So as you may have noticed that when you talk about markets, and before I start talking about power markets, I always ask myself a question, what is a market? You have all these experts who talk about markets. But the idiot on the road who's going to be your customer is not on the same page as you. So an important lesson, I think, is to understand that the chappie who is going to be your customer or your mass market is a chap who is not on the same page as you and will never be. We are talking about hierarchies. We are talking about structures. We are talking about specializations. We are talking about niche. We're talking about thinking out of the box with a new idea so I can come out with an app which is going to blow everyone's mind and make me into a billionaire and my valuation of my company is going to go crazy. I can see half of you smiling already, but that's exactly what you want to do, right? So what is the market? And my problem is when you don't know what a market is, and it keeps changing. I said, if I'm going to come and talk to you guys, what do I want to say to you? You guys are the gurus. You guys are the future.
I'm not there yet, but what I do bring to the table is a practitioner's view of how I see the world evolving and changing from a commerce perspective. Much of my time for the last several years has been around this. And right now, as I work at eBay, I'm taking a deep interest in figuring out how the marketplace's model work. Marketplace, if you see, is actually still a mandi, you know, the old concept. It's been there for thousands of years. It will continue to remain for the remaining 1,000 years or whatever we have left on this planet. But what happens is the rules of the game keep changing. Digital commerce, as we call it, is a global opportunity. Earlier, marketplaces were fairly localized phenomena. For example, right now there is a marketplace outside of IIM Joka campus when you want to go and buy vegetables every weekend or whenever there is a mandi, there's vegetables. It's a fairly localized phenomenon. And that's how markets have always been. Things have been fairly localized. But with the advent of the digital age, marketplaces have suddenly become, they are no longer constrained by space and time anymore. Marketplaces can act and exist anywhere. So the point really here is that it's a very exciting space, and some of you should probably consider exploring it more deeply as you graduate over the course of next couple of months and see if this resonates with you. But as in any business, as in any opportunity, there are various modes through which you actually operate. And commerce, and specifically e-commerce, over a period of time has had various interesting models. But there are two business models that have stood the test of the time. The first one and the more popular one is the inventory-led model. The other model, which has also stood the test of the time, is a marketplace model. So the marketplace model is, again, complementary to the inventory-led model. Here, essentially, there is somebody who is seeking a service or a product, and there is somebody who's willing to supply. The idea is to get these guys together in a safe and a healthy atmosphere so that exchange of services and goods can happen.
The topic of today's panel discussion is Synergy of Youth and Experience in India's Future. And essentially, what we intend to have during the session today is a discussion of the challenges that organizations face when they have workers, an intergenerational workforce. I mean, there are people at different levels of experience with different kinds of backgrounds, quite diverse. And when you bring all of them together into an organization and try to get them to work together, what are some of the major issues and challenges that come up? The first presentation, may I now invite Mamta to talk about some of the challenges that she has faced in her organization and her experiences. And then after that, Pramita will come in and talk about her experiences as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
This, for us,
Yeah.
do you want me to put it on or off? Thank you. So challenge like this, Professor, is not something that is new to the organization that I face and probably the industry. I've worked at least for the last 5 to 10, no, more than 10 years now in the ITES space. And ever since I started my career way back in the 2000s, bringing in young workforce was the thing with BPOs, right? You could be a team leader at 21, you could be a manager at 22, and you could be a senior manager at 23. And that was reality. And on a lighter note, if you didn't get senior manager, oh, sorry, what comes after senior manager those days? AVP. If you didn't get AVP at 24, my God, I will go to the next company down the road. So it wasn't new, or this isn't a new challenge that we're facing. However, I think what has changed for us is the quantum has changed, and the fact that we have to treat it far more systemically than we have in the past.
So the biggest issue when we deal with multiple generations at workforce or diversity in general are the assumptions that we make, and therefore act upon those assumptions. And assumptions often happen because of communication gap. If two elderly people are talking to each other, you can almost predict the conversation, right? If two retired people are talking to each other, their conversation is predictable. If two youngsters are talking to each other, their conversation is predictable. The moment this group starts talking to this group, it's far more rich, it's stimulating, it's intense, there is a debate, there are conflicts. And this is exactly what happens at workplace. So the issue is to be able to be sensitive to this and then deal with it.
What is the definition of generation? So while we talk about this Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, what is the definition of generation? When I was growing up, I learned generation is 10 years. Would you agree? I see some not sure. I kind of understand why you would not be. So if you would ask my grandma, she told me zamana, and she would say zamana is 20 years. Today, this generation changes in 2 years. If you look at your phone apps, and most of you I see have phones, your apps have changed in last 1 year. You were probably using BlackBerry Messenger to WhatsApp, and then somebody was telling me you need to have hike at school. So there is a change, So generation is actually, now the span is coming to 2 years. Fortunately, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, both has youth and has experience. You can feel good about it, you can feel frustrated about it, you can't ignore it.
There is a lot to learn from this generation. And the issue or problem or opportunity, however we may call it, is relatively unique to India. While rest of the world or entire world may say that they have to manage 3 generations simultaneously and a large number of people will be the Gen Y, the fact remains that the world average of Gen Y is about 25%. Whereas in India, it is estimated to be 50 to 60% of our working population is Gen Y. So that's a unique situation. And why I'm emphasizing on this, especially at IMC, is over the years in management education, our dependence on West has been enormous in terms of research, in terms of framework, in terms of, path-breaking insights. It has to change now. For this, we can't depend on West to get a solution. We have to find out what works in India, what works for us. The second point, and this is, you guys will be facing it very soon in next 5 years. You will be managing 3 generations simultaneously. Gen X may be your boss. you and your team members, direct reports, predominantly Gen Y. And in next 5 years, you will have millennials reporting into you, stepping into. And you will have to go through this process of discovery.
That what's the future of India's youth looks like to me, and all of us, all of you who are interested in business, who are interested in our country's progress, should also know about it a bit. I worked in private sector. Actually, I started in the private sector in 1984. It's been 30 years. And I was asking one of my hosts here that what is the average age of this program, and he said it's about 29 years. So you have enough experience there. Let's start with this. There are only 4 slides. I'm not going to bore you and speak less. And this was done about 3-4 years ago when I was an anchor. And it still holds. This is the problem we are going to face in terms of youth as managers, as government officials, and as journalists. If you talk about the synergy between youth and experience, so this is the youth part, and the experience all of you are going to have while you manage your jobs in your companies in time to come. Now, where do we go from here? I'd like to really all of you to ask questions about that. But I'll just end this by saying that all this needs basically is from young people to think of disruptive ideas, that how we can increase employment in the sectors which are employing huge number of people.
How's the energy level? Because I come from an energy industry. Because I want the energy level to be highly optimized and 100%. Are we 100%? Yes, good. So I'm going to share some of my experience in one sector of energy, which is a very important sector. That's oil and gas. Everything which you see around, somewhere it is connected to my industry. You see the power, okay? So you see the vehicle which I have driven here is run on petrol. The aircraft which I took from Delhi to Kolkata is run on aviation fuel. So I think my industry is everywhere. I will just, what I'm trying to do is to just give you a little broad perspective how is the oil and gas industry works before I go into my own area of HR challenges. HR challenges cannot be in isolation. It has to be in context to the business challenge. So I have to align my HR with the business. So knowing a little bit of business is always good.
As I was listening to the previous talk on the oil industry, I was actually very impressed with one point, that the extremely detailed knowledge he had, the way he was able to explain the great intricacies and complexities of running an oil company. I was impressed because, see, the various professions I have been involved in are professions for generalists, which means, in other words, simpler terms, that we are jack of all trades and leave the rest incomplete. I don't come from a business family. I never studied management. I had a colleague who had studied management. That was very helpful. I can name him, Sanjeev Bikhchandani. I think you all have heard of him. Yes? Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who runs Naukri.com. It was a very successful startup operation. And he had just started Naukri then. And there was hardly any internet penetration in the country. And many people were skeptical as to whether his effort, he is from IIM Ahmedabad, whether his effort would succeed. But he has succeeded brilliantly, I would say. So those were early days for him also. And he helped me. And we managed to put together a lot of just hard work, running around without any idea what we would do. But somehow, our own efforts, hard work, and the grace of God, we have managed. Now it's been a long time. 96, I became editor. 98, I took over the Pioneer, and I've been running it since.
But after seeing your seminar, I am tempted to say that this seminar is a gathering of important people who singly can do anything and together can decide that everything can be done. Let us start with the goals of economy. The first goal is growth, that is growth of national income. Second is price stability, inflation control. Third is financial stability, that is the bank should be strong financially. Then fiscal sustainability. Your fiscal deficit should be within control. Otherwise, you have to borrow more and there is a danger of government being trapped in the debt trap. Right from the Arthashastra of Arya Chanakya to now, the goals of economy have remained same. So the principles of economy remain same because humans are humans. See, when there is inflation, there is uncertainty, nobody invests large money, and so investment is less, and so production is less, national income is less, growth is less.
So, this is what you've seen Reebok as for many years in India. Being omnipresent in sport, in cricket especially, football, in Formula One, IPL, ICC, everything. What we ended up doing in this 1.5 years is a very, very super fast repositioning of the whole brand, primarily to the core audience or the target group, and also somewhat to the bigger audience. And it's paying also. What's good is we've been voted as the best brand in our category in 4 biggest researches which came up in the last 1 year. So this one, for example, is the most exciting brand in the category by brand equity. Then the most popular youth brand, India's most trusted brand, India's most attractive brand, and this one was the latest. It also appears in the best brands 2014.